All right, folks, welcome back to Mike and Maurice's Mind Escape. We have episode number 163 today. We are going to be discussing UFOs and altered states and consciousness and all that jazz with, we got our good buddy back here, Sean Cahill. If you don't know who Sean is, he was a retired chief petty officer who was stationed on the USS Princeton during the USS Nimitz Tic-Tac incident in November, I believe, 2004. So what was that? Coming up on about 16 years now.
Yeah, it's just this past November 14th.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I have his information down below. You can check out his website, and he's pretty active on Twitter as well. What is it? Is it Minty Hyperspace?
Yeah, all of my handles online are Minty Hyperspace.
All right, so check that out. I have the links down below. And you can check us out at mindescapepodcast.com. And you can also check out our Patreon at patreon.com/mindescapepodcast. Maybe we'll do a short little Patreon at the end with Sean here and maybe get some juicy tidbits in at the end. And also head on over to Indra's Web at indrasweb.org and sign up to get an alert when the app goes live. We're just waiting for the media stuff to cool down here with everything that's going on. Hopefully it's sooner than later. And the app is designed for rational discourse on all the topics we discuss. I know, Sean, I got you on there. We're going to try and get you active on there and get you a nice a group on there. So,
Really looking forward to that.
All right. Well, let's do this. So how are you?
I'm doing really good. I'm in a good place these days. I feel real fortunate. With the way everything's been going and everything, I feel like I got a good headspace and heart space these days to make decisions. How about you?
Yeah, just hanging in there, right? Just staying safe, staying put, trying to be creative and just keep the show going and just stay as busy as possible.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head there. All you can really do is just create stuff. And, we're fortunate that we're artists in many ways, so we can hunker down and just be happy creating. That's all we can do,
Yeah. And in a lot of ways, it's more important than ever now because people need somewhere to turn.
Absolutely. And that's why we don't really talk about a lot of the political or social stuff on here, because I want people, this is like a place where people can come and just, learn something new and not have anything crammed down their throat and just, hey, this is, these are the greater questions of life, like who are we, where do we come from, where are we going, that kind of stuff, so. But
I think if we're lucky, this stuff we're going to talk about is the kind of things that are going to solve the problems that we all seem to be stuck in these days.
For sure. It's all about the bigger picture and trying to push humanity along and, get everybody on the same page as much as possible. It'll never all be on the same page, but so what's new? Is there anything as far as news goes that anything you've heard on the grapevine or?
One of those guys that I don't try not to peddle stuff, but I'm very positive right now about the things that I'm hearing. I can't be too specific on them because most of the people that are involved are either journalists that are either embargoed or it's their scoop. There's a lot of talk in the weeds out there, especially on UFO Twitter, that is quite far off the mark. So a lot of people, and that's unfortunate, but I think people need to stay grounded with the things that we've the strides that we've made in the past and the things that are going to get us where we want to be. I know everybody wants a bombshell, but always has a different idea of what that bombshell is going to be. And unfortunately in ufology, bombshells always come with words like alien or ET or disclosure. And what I'm saying is that we're trying to make progress here. Progress is not about yelling fire and getting everyone's attention per se. It's about building consensus and building understanding. To do that, we need scientifically backed data. We need government validation that has gravitas and meaning behind it, that isn't some flippant statement from a random public affairs officer who may only be doing bidding of a lower echelon flag officer who thinks that their opinion counts in this matter and they've never been briefed on it. So it's one of the reasons tonight, if I'm going to plug anything, I will plug the UAP task force. I'm wearing one of Dan Zetterman's t-shirts. But the UAP task force that's being set up in Washington and that's being, in some ways, built out of the mist in a lot of ways. I really think that's where we're going to be looking in the future to see the very serious answers, or to see the serious research and to see the serious conclusions that we're going to be able to plant flags in and really move forward. Because some of the stuff that I'm seeing and some of the things that I'm hearing, I think are going to turn heads because they're going to change the way that we've thought of things before and the way that we're going to have to think of them in the future. And I think some of the things that we're going to be looking forward to are really going to allow us to finally start somewhere in a real manner and to stop asking the same questions over and over again. There will always be questions, but I'm really looking forward to an entity that's going to be able to, a governmental entity, that is, since we may talk about entities.
Watch out now. Watch out now.
Early on. People get up in their seat. Did he say entities? I really think a governmental entity that is going to help us set baseline. When did we start studying this? What does it mean to us right now? What does it represent to the U.S. government or the military, who may or may not have more information elsewhere in their apparatus? So while I enjoy the ins and outs of UFO Twitter, and I have a lot of friends in ufology, I don't think that we haven't been able to get the answers out of ufology yet. Not ones that the public stand firm on, or that provide us the foundation that we need to finally bring in the academics and the scientists who right now are afraid to touch the subject. That's what I see coming. So a lot of the buzz you see on UFO Twitter is constantly talking about things. I'm always being asked if this thing is going to be released or if this thing is real, and everybody's guessing all over the place. And I don't like playing guessing games. I'm hopeful. But I also know that just about anything in this realm can evaporate overnight, because those of us who are having these discussions, we're not privy to the behind the scenes control structures, which is another favorite phrase of folks that are going to be watching this tonight. But these control structures exist at all aspects of our society. So the fact that some of these are obscured from us and we don't even get to know what are going on are some things we're probably going to have to get more used to.
Absolutely. And yeah, shout out to at the Signal on Twitter, as you mentioned. Also, shout out to Chris Wolford and everybody, UFO Twitter. We love you. But like you mentioned, there's a lot of nonsense too. So I think that you have to just, you have to have kind of a discerning eye for what's going on, as you mentioned, and not let some of the more salacious or, like we all want to believe, right? I mean, I think that as humans, we all want to believe something crazy is out there, something crazy is going to happen. And for the most part, I think that that usually falls short. But I think there's something about humanity, right, that like keeps inching us along. There's these mysteries that keep popping up, and it keeps, furthering our interest even more into what's out there, what's inward. We'll get into meditation and stuff, but what's going on inside too. What's going on inside your mind? What's going on inside? What's going on with consciousness? So. I think you brought up some good points there, and I think that you mentioned last time you were on that you thought that ufology needs to die, and I actually agree with that to a certain extent, because I'm so sick of seeing fake pictures, CGI videos. I'm so sick of that. It's what's going on with this stuff? It's like, and if you go on Facebook, it's even worse, because there's literally people that are like, "Oh my God, that's an awesome video. Where was that taken?" And it's like the most fake video I've ever seen. So. I think you need to, like I said, take it, be able to discern what's what in that regard.
In a lot of ways, I feel like we have an uphill climb because we've lost trust in this country. We have enough outliers that constantly poison the well, regardless of how anyone feels about it. There's always enough dissent nowadays to say something is fake news. It almost doesn't matter what subject it is. And so I find that really interesting that at a time when a country that used to value, well, it used to be truth, justice, and American way, not fake news, obfuscation and get away with it. But I don't mean to bring, I'm not making this about politics. I'm only making it about the psychological zeitgeist that nobody knows what the hell is real anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've found this new thing has moved itself onto center stage with us. And I think that that's going to play into our later conversations, because you and I are talking, when we talk UFOs, we're struggling to talk about something people see as nuts and bolts craft piloted by beings that are unknown, probably they assume from far away. That's the bubble that's around it. But those people who are only aware of the nuts and bolts aspect and have never touched on anything by the likes of the greats like Jacques Vallée or someone of amazing catalog, if they're not aware of the trickster aspect of the phenomenon, if they haven't been informed about the idea that things like abductions or physical evidence have a certain credence, these are all different facets of something, and we could spend hours on any one of those facets. And right now we're just trying to get people to realize that there is something solid in here and appearing on radar and appearing on video and harassing our forces and intruding upon our nuclear weapons system sites. In some cases, activating or deactivating weapons systems. All of these things are enough to rattle people without getting into the idea that this is going to mess with you as a paradigm. So your audience is a very nuanced audience, a very well educated and well versed in a lot of disparate areas that most folks may never even touch in a lifetime. And so there are so many aspects and so many questions to come at this from. I do fear that data collection is going to be really tough, and that so if we don't have someone that we can trust, if we don't have an entity that we feel is above BS, that's willing to report within the guidelines of the law everything that we're supposed to get back, I don't see how we can ever go forward with this. I don't see how you can ever start moving around grant money and funding and things like that have to set up the proper infrastructure to study this. Mm-hmm. Because while I'm wholly behind grassroots efforts and private effort and efforts in the private sector, I think TTSA is amazing. I wholly support Steve McDaniel at Skyhub and his team. Support Chase Williams and the X100 program that he's building. These are folks that I talk to on a daily basis, and all of us are wholly concerned with the nuts and bolts aspect. But these are small groups of people, and they face this uphill climb of, okay, I've put my life savings into developing a sensor suite that I have the proprietary control over, that is open source, and that I'm willing to share with anyone. And now everybody just wants the data. Where does a guy like that go? So if we can get somebody like the UAPTF to start establishing baseline on these things, then those smaller programs, and to include larger programs like TTSA, that already have, budgets and are already working with the SEC and stuff like that. This is going to allow that flow, that things really happen. And there's a lot of people out there that contact me, and they're worried. They're worried that these things are gonna get pulled back into the black, and that the UAPTF is gonna suck all of this up and just give it away to the military-industrial complex, etc. And while I understand any constituents' concerns over where the money goes in our defense apparatus, anything that moves forward with the UAPTF in the public eye is positive. The fact that we have a UAPTF is incredible. So everybody wants to get ahead of all of these worries and this paranoia that they have, and we're just barely trying to like get the lights turned on in the conference room and maybe get a press conference, you know. And so we need more people, and that's why when I say we need more people who understand this, who aren't politically motivated, and who aren't approaching these new ideas as paranoid, stigmatized rantings. We need more people to do the research that came out of, or to look at the research that came out of Skinwalker Ranch, and not just at the entertainment things that are being showing the general public on television. So I think it's imperative that we have someone like the UAPTF there to, frankly, just provide that bedrock. And I think we're there.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I do see more of these research groups popping up, and I think that's good. I mentioned it on, I don't know what exact episode, but I think of this as like a market. Like, competition drives creativity and ingenuity, and the more different groups or research collectives or whatever is going on, I think the better, because it's just going to push the other people to do harder research and, you know, push things along further. And I think it'll actually give us a clearer picture sooner than later, if in that regard too. The waters won't be as muddied if there's more information out there. So when you look at what's going on now, you know, the people are, like you mentioned, you know, you can't probably say anything, but there's a lot of excitement and people are excited for what's to come and everything. Do you think that, you know, are they going to maybe, again, I know you can't really say anything, but do you think that there's more videos coming, or do you think it's data, or do you think it's more pilot or eyewitness accounts, or what do you think in that regards?
I think all of the above are things that we're going to see in the near enough future. The data exists. I think what's most important right now are relationships, pathways of information flow, as well as accountability and responsibility. So while I do believe that the glossy rock and roll side that everybody wants to see, you know, a clear picture, oh my kingdom for a clear picture from a government entity, but I think that those things are constrained. That's the problem. I think that if the data were horses, they're chomping at the bit and they're pulling at the reins and they're huffing. People want out, and the people want the data. But it's not a simple task to get the things that seem to be as mired down as those are out. And you always have to convince people that the people you're going to give that information to have a need to know. That's the fire right there that the American people have to light under themselves, is a pragmatic need to know. Mm-hmm. And there seems to be details that have, and I'm not saying I'm privy to those details. I don't know what they are.
I think you are.
Lack of
hey, watch out now.
I'm saying the lack of transparency over the course of the 70-year investigation has led me to believe that the answers are not simple. If this was aliens from Glip Glop, this would be no problem. I mean, it's simple. Everybody gets that already. They've gotten that for a long time. So it's again, there it's up in the air as to where we want to go. But there's a reality to this. There's a reality to this that numerous professionals have dealt with for decades and decades. And I was having a conversation with a colleague today. I don't think he's anyone that anyone would know, so they don't need to guess. But he was incredulously sticking to a specific point on a specific case that I felt was just cut and dry, simple to understand, already in the public view. And I basically said to him, look, I said, I'm a law enforcement guy. So my need to know only goes up to a certain level professionally, regardless of the level of clearance I hold. And I said to him, I said, hey, man, in your line of work, people talk about secrets. And he goes, no, not unless they have a need to know. And I go, right. Nobody just sits around yakking about secrets that are theirs. And if you're in this line of work that has to keep secrets because of National Security Act and non-disclosure agreements and things like that, there's too much at risk. You understand the reasons behind it. And nobody talks about their own secrets. They talk about other people's secrets. So that's another thing people have to understand is a lot of the things that you see flying around, if someone's talking about it, it means they either broke an oath or they're bullshitting. Pardon the bluntness.
Yeah, you're fine.
But
Say whatever you
there's
want.
so much of it that goes down. And that's why I guess I keep circling back to UAPTF. I really got like this huge, I mean, and no one asked me to do squat. This is my t-shirt. I pay, I bought this because I like Dan. This ain't the t-shirt for the task force, et cetera. So I'm just real jazzed about it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I like I said, I like the excitement. I like the creativity and looking for ways to kind of validate or look for data and that kind of stuff. So we had you on, I think it was episode 127. So we had you on a little bit ago. And that we focused on, the Tic-Tac incident and your point of view of that, and that, you were on, what was that, episode 3 of season 1 of Unidentified, your story and your recreation of your encounter and all that. So when you look back at that now and you look, you're like, does your point of view change on like what you experienced over time? Like, meaning that I recently had a weird thing happen, like an orb thing with my dad. We were in his backyard. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but my question is, like, each day that passes, I think about it a little bit differently. So like, since you had your experience on the USS Princeton, has your point of view changed at all, or is it like an ever evolving kind of a thing?
It changed a great deal. I think I ranged all over the territory that I could have since then to now. Most of my life I was a fan of UFOs. I thought they were cool. When I was a kid, they were something I was interested in. Prior to the military, I had a few interesting. At the time, I thought they were just neat experiences, but I didn't see them in the vein of being paranormal. They were just weird things happened. Fast forward to 2004, I'm a very different individual. I'm a newly pinned chief petty officer that's in charge of good order and discipline on a warship. And I'm at that age. I'm 26 years old. I made it relatively early, made chief in 8.5 years. And that guy was deathly afraid of making sure he always did the right thing. I was a person that in that job, I wasn't always on point. Trust me. There's plenty of guys, probably Gary Voorhees and Jason Turner and Kevin Day would be some of the first people that could tell you that I was not always on point. But look back at that, and that was a young man trying to grow up, trying to really finally put on his big boy pants for the first time. And, so I was a very down to earth guy in that. Down to earth meaning I didn't believe anything above it. I wasn't buying any of that, and it was fantastic to me. but the way the chain of command reacted, I could not. It was incredulous that they didn't seem to care, that the captain didn't care, and that really solidified for me. Well, there's nothing paranormal out there. This is probably our program, and that's what's up. And I actually really disagreed with it. I ended up figuring out my above top secret username, and that from the time when I went back and was able to see the thing, there's no way in hell I'm going to tell anybody what that was. But I was really against almost every aspect of ufology. I was a hardcore skeptic who thought that things like orbs, anything to do with psi, anything to do with consciousness was garbage. I was completely without knowledge, ensconced in a materialist worldview, based on what happened on board Princeton with the Tic-Tac. That's a simple fast forward all the way to me retiring in 2015. And I found out when I took off my uniform, I'd completely identified with being a chief petty officer, and I didn't know who the hell I was anymore. I just didn't know how to operate. I was in bad shape. Got myself, and we can seg into psychedelics here in a minute too, because it's the perfect opportunity. But I was so low that I had an experience in the mirror. It was a very emotional moment. I was making eye contact with myself for a very long period of time, and I was doing everything I can to, as a person who didn't believe, to try to find a soul inside of myself and to reach it and to talk to it, because I felt like the son of a bitch that was on the other side of this over here was ruining everything for everyone around him because he was too selfish. It doesn't matter what it was. Whatever I looked at, I felt like I needed to rant to gain respect and control. And it finally dawned on me. I was like, it doesn't matter how wrong I think everyone else in my world is. I don't want to be this anymore. And I have a family. I have a wife, and I have two teenage daughters. So the option that a lot of people choose for a quick exit's not on the table. It's not in my cards or in my heart to do that. So, and I knew that immediately in that moment, and I had to suck it up and tell myself we're going to change, that I wanted to be good more than anything. And I felt something happen in my chest. And the only reason that I'm willing to recount this story is because I already knew what a panic attack felt like. I'd been in the emergency room for it numerous times since I retired. I already knew what a heart attack felt like. I'd had one off the coast of Africa while on the USS Macon Island and had to be medevac to Germany on a Learjet.
Did you lose consciousness when you had that heart attack?
No, but I did have an out-of-body experience when they put in my stent at Landstuhl Army.
Because I was going to say most cardiac arrests where you go unconscious usually result in like a traditional near-death experience where people, leave their body and go to a different spatial realm and meet their loved ones or something along those lines.
Not for me. I did, when they put in my stent, I had an OBE that the origin of which is the origin of me studying astral projection and the Monroe technique and things like that, was the fact that, this tattoo that I have right here, if you can see this squiggle, is my EKG from my heart attack. I was actually on the table when I had it. I had come up. So you could even, this is fun because we're going to get a little paranormal tonight. So I'm sorry for the folks that are like, no, he's getting away from nuts and bolts. But you could say that I had a little precog with it because I was in medical 20 or 40 minutes before my heart attack, complaining of pains and all of these other symptoms. And they pulled my blood and checked for troponin and all of these other things, and everything was normal. Everything was completely normal, but I was sure I was having a heart attack. And they sent me back down to the chief petty officer's berthing to get some rest. I'd been working too hard, et cetera, because I had been. I was a horrible drinker, smoker, strict case up till 2 o'clock in the morning, then up again at 4 o'clock, and it showed. And so I popped, but sorry, I lost my train of thought. The tattoo that I have here, I put it here because they tried to put the angiogram, the thing that goes all the way to your heart. They tried to go through my wrist, and it got all the way up to the shoulder, and the vein collapsed on the catheter. So they had to remove it. Well, that was when that happened. Apparently, that's when I started remembering things from 25 feet up, because it was a very large room that had a lot of different equipment in it. And I was in this interesting stabilized chair that they gave me I guess I could go back through my medical record and find out what the anesthesia was, but it was one that let me maintain a certain amount of consciousness. They said, you're not going to go completely out. Now I think the drug put me in a theta state, honestly, pretty quickly and simply. But from my point of view, I didn't know anything about that stuff back then. My point of view, though, my consciousness was up on the ceiling, and I watched the doctor put his foot on the armrest of the chair to get leverage. That steady leverage you would probably need to pull out, because the vein seized on it. I watched him doing this with, the head tilt feeling of a confused dog, and looking around the room and going, oh, they're having a hard time. And since I've been able to induce that experience since then, now I know this is something I was doing in my childhood, during periods of trauma, let's say, without getting into family stuff. So there were a lot of these things for me, and in my anecdotal experience, I was able to line up relatively quickly with other people's data based on the books that they had written and the things that they'd come across. So anyways, we're kind of far afield from...
No, this is interesting. Changes. No, it's not that. I mean,
take us on your adventure.
Well, this is about altered states too. I would consider that 100% what you just mentioned, an altered state. Now, when you look at like that experience and then the UFO experience, and is there any crossover in your mind in terms of like a connection between the two, or anything that like any hallmarks of like, because a lot of people, when they see stuff in the sky, there is some sort of accompanying altered perception or altered state or something like that. Did you have any of that, or?
So I've got some experiences with missing time that had other people present, some adventurous things. A good friend of mine, the drummer for the band I was in high school, and I were coming home probably from band practice, headed up the hill in San Jose towards my sister's house. And we both saw a very large football-shaped green meteor go across the top, what we called a meteor, go over the top of the mountains relatively slowly, with a small trail of coming out the back. Now I know plenty about meteors and nickel, iron, and re-entry, and how different things, magnesium and other different things, flare under different conditions, and what the colors mean and all that. So at the time, we were a couple of nerds. We thought it was just a meteor, but it was weird enough that I remember saying to him, and I know our memories are quite flawless, but I remember saying to him, since we were only about a quarter of a mile away from where we were headed, let's not talk about what we saw. Let's get to the house and let's separate and let's draw it. Because if that looked real, whatever the hell that was, let's see if we saw the same. We were those kind of kids. That So he stayed in the kitchen. I went in the, I was being a real jackass about it. He's like, just sit here. And I'm like, no, one of us is going to look at each other's papers. We're never going to know unless we try to like make this science-y, you know? And I went in the dining room, and we came back and we saw the exact same thing. And the way I remember it, I thought we had some other friends over that night and maybe wrote a couple of songs and hung out. Those other friends don't remember coming over to the house that night, writing songs and hanging out. They don't remember that night at all. And the guy that I was with swears to God that we drove over the mountain and we went all the way up to the James Lick Observatory on the top of Mount Hamilton, chasing this freaking green light. I don't remember any of that, and he won't talk to me about it anymore. He one day called me up, intoxicated and upset, and said, here's what happened. And I mean, that's a story. You know, that's, to other people, that's a crazy story. To me, that's another anecdotal event in a weird life with a lot of different things that have happened. And basically from 2004 up until about late 2015, with one, honestly, I'd have to check my notes because I forget all the crap that I've written down. But with one major exception, about 5 months after the Tic-Tac incident, I had a black triangle sighting here in San Diego. But it wasn't the one that everybody talks about. It wasn't this TR3B that everybody talks about with 3 white lights and a red one in the center. This was an equilateral black matte triangle that had to be at least a half a mile wide.
Wow.
And it was coming in due east on the same track that most of the jets from El Centro and Brown Field and other airports.
Sounds like the one that was mentioned in the Phoenix Lights, like not the one where people see the lights, but the prior one that people talk about. I think, who was it, like Kurt Russell or somebody got a good look at it, something like that.
Yeah.
But
I haven't had listened to his account.
Yeah, well, they said a pilot had seen something. He ended up being the pilot. I think he has his pilot's license, but
of course.
If I remember that correctly. But yeah, so the black triangle was different. It was more, it had like pointy edges as opposed to like curved edges. Is that what you're?
You know, as far as the edges go, my feeling was that this thing was curved in general, like that it had smooth edges. But what really got me about it was, so I had just finished there, and to me, it's always interesting. What are the circumstances surrounding something? What was a person's mood when they had the sighting? What were you doing previously to it? Is there any way that we can gauge your generalized state, blood pressure, mood, and possibly brain state? Now, it's only guesses and it's only extrapolation. But I had been outside in the zone. I had been in a flow state playing a political video game called, I don't think it's around anymore, so E-Republic. And it was a game, political intrigue and writing, and it had a little war algorithm that was just a random number generator based on population size with some random factors in it. But I was doing that if it was probably, I think it was around midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning. So I'd probably been doing it for at least 3 hours. The kids were probably in bed. I was even still wearing my uniform. I was wearing my khakis still. And it snapped the computer shut. And this was a long time ago. I lit a cigarette and was standing there. And all of a sudden I'm looking east, and I realized that on this completely clear night, the stars that I'm seeing are going out and then coming back from the horizon, coming towards me. And I'm trying to figure it out. And as it gets about right up almost above me is when I start really discerning the shape, because there were no lights on it whatsoever. So I don't know if there was moonlight that night. I'm thinking that there must have been, based on how much it was illuminated. There was no engine noise. And that's the thing that really got me, was because I was waiting to put my hands above my ears, because I thought that I was seeing probably the next gen B2, you know, or something like that. It didn't match anything I'd seen before in popular mechanics, like the Aurora or anything.
Yeah, that's what they look like, kind of, right? Like the triangle kind of looks like the B2, but the B2's just got that cutout at the back.
Yeah, yeah. This was equilateral. This was completely equilateral, and it was about only about 1,000 feet above,
Hmm.
and it was freaking huge, man. And there's like there was no sound. It just the wind going over the outside of the craft could be heard, and it went over this huge palm tree. Um, is what I'm looking at it go over in my yard, and I ran the length of the sidewalk in my yard and jumped up on this really sturdy table that my buddies and I had built that had a wooden umbrella. I broke the umbrella off, steadying myself as I watched this thing tip over on its wing, just immediately sweep southeast, and its aspect shrunk. So I wouldn't say it zipped, but boy, did it accelerate with no sound and move faster than things we see. So not this instantaneous stuff that we talk about.
Sure.
But so over that didn't change anything for me. Again, where it was coming from, what it looked like, it was a natural progression of events, and I was just like, damn, guess we figured out anti-gravity or something, you know. And but that was a long time ago. That was 2005, January or February of 2005. I still didn't believe in any of that until I retired. And what did it was that it began with the heart attack, the out-of-body experience, then what I'm assuming was my heart chakra opening up later on. Eventually, I had to learn how to meditate because Sam Harris told me it would calm me down, and I believed him. Pragmatic atheist. So if he believed in meditation, then there must be something there. And he said that I didn't have to believe in God if I wanted to meditate. And I didn't have to do all of this other stuff. And he still doesn't. He still is real cagey about it. He just says there's something nifty on the, when you get to samadhi.
Yeah, he's weird when he listening to his like trip reports, and because I think he's had some psychedelic experience, but I think that it seems like he fights his own mind in that regard. Like you can tell
he say there's something weird.
You can tell he's seen and experienced weird things, but just like the way he talks about it, he tries to be as like cool,
or something.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think that he gets to keep an audience. Will never entertain this stuff as long as he doesn't give up the goods. So, it be that from there, and this I'm running a risk here, but this is my spiritual practice. This has nothing to do with the decisions I make in regards to nuts and bolts and national security and things like that. But that's just to set some of the folks at ease that some of these things might freak out. But I then spent enough time in meditation to experience some things, and Sam's the first person to say don't talk about it. And generally, I don't think the CDs are something that you should be talking about, but that's the kind of show we're on tonight, so I'm okay. I'm totally fine with it. But I had some visions, and basically all of my tattoos, and it's only these 6 of them, right? But they all represent something that occurred in consciousness or not. And very simply, they're a yin yang, they're a endless knot. There's something that I designed myself. This was from my heart attack and my out of body experience. This is a simple, I can't even think right now, but it's a Zen symbol. It's killing me that I can't think of it. And then this one I designed myself to remind me of how I think about 3 dimensions of space plus 1 of time, and whatever happens to possibly be on the other side of all of it. And so the last 5 years since 2015 have been really interesting for the amount of new things that I've accepted because of anecdotal evidence. I very quickly, in mid 2015, began practicing. I got my hands on the Monroe CDs. I had found, as I was bored one day searching the CIA archives, and looked up some stuff. I think I'd read a few books by, I read a book by Russell Targ and one by Hal Puthoff at the time, and was interested in those things. And so I started doing some research into it, and a couple of guys had showed up on Utah. Not Courtney Brown, I hadn't seen him yet. He's been around for quite a while, but another guy who's since gone, who came out of corporate remote viewing. And that really blew my mind to find out that first of all, that the movie I'd seen, Men Who Stare at Goats, was a parody of real things, first of all.
Uh-huh.
That all of these programs existed, that a lot of people put a lot of money, time, and effort into vetting them, all disappeared. And then here's this guy, this young 20-something guy, who's showing up on YouTube claiming to be a remote viewer, and he sets himself up, and with, and I'm not going to give him a hard time about making a living at it. That's what he was there to do. So, he's all paywalled up and everything like that. It's all cool. And I'm blown away. And so this kind of opened a lot of doors for me. And so that started opening doors for me into, well, what are the other things that the government's completed programs on? So I went down the rabbit hole of legitimizing the idea that one of the secrets that's being kept is consciousness. And if not the meaning behind it, at least the fact that the boundaries of consciousness and the boundaries of our abilities are wider, granted more subtle than we think, but wider than we think. And our abilities are pretty incredible. Mm-hmm. And these abilities, if practiced on a large scale, would immediately change the world. But I don't know how we get a guy like me, who basically went through hell, decided he wanted to be a human being, to be happy, and then realized there was an entire other universe out there. If that's presented the wrong way, you shut down everything you were trying to do immediately for the people who can't touch that. So not everybody has a pension. Not everybody's retired and gets to spend 18 hours a day learning and meditating and doing cognitive therapy and going to places where you can ingest psilocybin without being arrested. Which, let's be real, that's it's in a lot of ways, and you and I, we can discuss this too, but the idea of making some of these therapeutic fungi legal, the best part about it is removing the last vestiges of fear that come along with doing something that your society tells you that you're not allowed to do and that you're a deviant for doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing is we know that's where a lot of our traditions actually come from. You look at the Eleusinian mysteries, you look at the mystery schools, you look at alchemy, you look at all these traditions throughout history, all incorporated psychedelic use, understood psychedelics as compounds, used them as medicines and different things. And now you have science catching up again. You have the whole... I think obviously with the whole MK Ultra and, the hippie stuff, and I think that all that stuff kind of muddied the waters, and they're like, well, we can't control or understand any of this, so we'll just make it all illegal. Yeah. And in that regard, I think that did a huge disservice to the whole mental health, crisis and issue. And at the time, look, I think that this is part of our evolution. We're at a point now where we have more time and space to think than we've ever had before. And for me, somebody that has OCD and has used psilocybin to heal and treat myself, I've talked about it many times on this podcast. I wrote a blog about it. I've been pretty open about it. When you look at that, like you're right. There's lots of countries where it's illegal and all these different things. But we have to, going forward, I mean, you look at what Oregon did with legalization recently, and I think that there'll be some states coming across, maybe in the next cycle and everything, and we'll just keep trying to push it forward, similar to how marijuana has been pushed forward. But like I was mentioning with my mental health stuff, though, is these are things that I've been through all the therapies. I've been to all the psychiatrists, psychologists. I've done all the things. The most helpful thing to me has been CBT therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, and psilocybin. The psilocybin allows the CBT to take hold and allows you to do the work that you need to do. It kind of resets your mind.
You can't just do drugs and you don't do the inner work.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
not.
you gotta have an
That's just
intention when you
doing
go in.
drugs.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
and don't get me wrong. There's people out there that do their own administering and their own therapy, and all that I'm trying to say about that is I'm not even saying that you can't utilize these things in a fashion, but I'm saying if we're talking about therapy, everybody should know that it's not just do something and kill yourself. I wish it was that simple.
Yeah, I'm a proponent of more options and whatever works for the individual. I'm not somebody that's saying, oh we all need to get on this, train or do this specific thing. That's not. I think what I think is going to get this thing pushed across the finish line is what I'm talking about, which is just more options. Yes, some people are going to respond well to conventional treatment. I was not one of those people. So I was fortunate enough that I had already had a relationship with these psychoactive compounds from my earlier years in high school, and I knew what they were, and something clicked in my brain, and it kind of all came together. But like you said, not everybody's so lucky. Not everybody lives in places where these things are available. Or legal or whatever.
There's a learning curve. There's a learning curve too, because you and I both know a heroic dose on your first time for someone who doesn't know what to expect can be horrible.
Yeah, I think that's. I mean,
health.
we've always gone to Irwid, and Irwid is a great resource because they not only have trip reports, it shows you the dosages and thresholds and all that kind of stuff. So I think that 5 grams in silent darkness for somebody that's never done it is not the way to go.
Much.
However, 1 to 1.5 and being around people who you love and it's a good setting, that might be the right thing. So
like anything, it requires education and training. But I'm so hopeful. And I don't mean to sound like a gatekeeper with it. You're going to have people that are like, man, let me do my drugs the way I'm doing my drugs. But I'm just trying to get us as fun as it sounds to say, let's stop talking about doing drugs.
I even hate that word drugs. I guess I don't hate it.
Well, that's why we've been brought up is there's a lot of negativity surrounding it. Even cannabis today, it's legal. I still feel ashamed. It's just been beaten into the subconscious. You know what I'm saying?
Poor Maurice. He feels so ashamed.
I really don't drink anymore. I have a beer here and there or a cocktail for the taste and the social.
Alcohol is the worst drug. Alcohol is a drug.
I agree. And granted, everybody out there who's anti-pot is you can just hear people lining up.
Oh, I don't care
for their drug. Yeah, I don't either. But
like you said, we've got a niche crowd here. We've grown slowly. I'm not worried about the numbers. If we were doing that, I would have been saying crazy shit from the beginning. So
we might have to.
We did actually say crazy shit in the beginning, but we didn't know better, so that was the excuse for that. So
so you got the full arc of my the full arc of the how did your opinion change thing all gains a serious foundation when I meet Luis Elizondo. And a lot of people don't know this, but the only reason I'm still here is because he and I are pals. And we have numerous irons in the fire together, lots of projects we're working on together. We spend a couple hours on the phone a week discussing these projects and frankly just wargaming everything that we can think of. I know a lot of people, they want access to Luis Elizondo. They want to bend his ear. They want to get him in a skiff. They want to do all. Lou's got a life to live. And Lou's done a lot for us already. And so going forward, I don't know that Lou wants to sit down and play 1,000 questions every time that there's work to be done, and he has a nuanced understanding of what's going on that frankly being on the interview circuit constantly is and doing some of these things is taking him away from work that he's keenly and uniquely able to do. So meeting Lou brought a validation for me to this. And it's gotten me to stick around. I'm not going to lie. I tried to quote unquote quit a couple of times because this got really weird. having the phenomenon continue, re-engage, and then retreat again, because it does come and go. There's aspects of it that people are going to learn about that seem to move around from person to person. There are some of the interesting data that came out of Skinwalker Ranch. A lot of people not everybody is aware, but there were some people that had some lasting contact, even after going home, and contact that involved family members. And I think all of us, you don't have to be a cop or a military person to know that when you bring home the boogeyman, your family is not happy, and neither are you. Whether it's attention of enemy combatants or intelligence services or unknowns out there.
That's the one area I think I've been most skeptical of, is the Skinwalker Ranch stuff. I've watched the Jeremy Corbell documentary. I've watched the Skinwalker Ranch show on History Channel. I'm not opposed to any of it. I don't see anything wrong with what they're doing. I just didn't see, I guess, some of the things that were supposedly crazy as really anything different than what we're already kind of seeing in other places. I guess that's just my opinion.
Sure.
I'm open to new things if some new revelation comes out, and obviously we love metaphysical ideas and altered states, and I've even tossed around the idea that they did that show Project Blue Book, and in that show they had, on that episode where they talked about Skinwalker Ranch, they had like an underground base, and they were releasing this gas, like a psychoactive gas, and the kid was having all these visions of the the Skinwalker and everything, but it was some sort of psychoactive thing. So I guess what I'm saying is obviously there have been Native Americans and indigenous people there long before we were here, and there's, like we mentioned, plant medicines and shamanism and all these things, and who's to say that you can't tap into that altered state? Now, I think that what the whole gist is, right, is that this is a special, magnetic, you're on some sort of, not necessarily a ley line, but something along where you're in some sort of vortex, right? Isn't that the whole basis? It's like some gateway to something.
Well, that's what everybody who's not involved and wasn't there says. Yeah, that's the popular story that swirls around it, and then you have to take into account, as you said, the Native American stories about the Skinwalker, which essentially is a shape-shifting shaman. Mm-hmm. So that's where the ranch gets its namesake. But I would, without pointing out any specific weird events, I would say two things. If you can get a copy of the final report from Skinwalker, I'm sure we'd all love to see it. It's still nowhere to be found, classified, etc. However, there is data to be gained, and there are people to talk to, like Dr. Gary Nolan and people like that who were out there originally. And again, these are very, very serious academics. You get somebody like Gary Nolan. We're not talking about a woo-woo guy. He doesn't talk about little green. He doesn't do any of it. We don't even need to go down the list of silly names and things. But what he does do is hardcore research. And one of the things that I found really interesting was that, and this has come up in discussions that I've had with people like Steve McDaniel from Sky Hub, people who are very, very technically oriented in their data collection, but not closed-minded at all. But basically, the data collection they were getting at Skinwalker Ranch via technical means, cameras and sensors, etc., was not as useful as the after effects that were present in the experiencers and the witnesses.
So
they
like
were
what,
able
like
to
a dark passenger type scenario kind of a thing?
I'm not. No, I'm talking about that if you were in the so let me say this. Let me use a metaphor of, if something is in the vicinity of something that is irradiated, there will be evidence of radiation.
Oh, okay, I got you.
So people became the litmus paper And I shouldn't say we, I have no involvement. I say we as, the American government often, because I was with the Navy for 20 years. But they were able to gain information based on the effects, the lasting effects on the people. And I can't get into the details of those because I don't know them, but there is more information out there on that. And I think that there's a lot to be said there. I think that it says that, and this is the main reason that people who follow the articles that I write, or some of the things that I say about the nuts and bolts portion of the phenomenon, that there is an aspect of this that falls firmly under what the rest of us would call paranormal. Now, the people that seem to be studying this seem to be coming to a conclusion that there is probably no such thing as paranormal. There are just edges to our perception and the spectrum and what we're able to detect, et cetera, and that we bump into those things often. But I still think that until we are able to give a pragmatic reason, I think, again, the UAPTF or people like Dr. Nolan or other, let's say, veterans of some of these programs who are just coming out from under their NDAs, people like Hal Puthoff, who I'm still waiting for him to really start talking.
Yeah, I haven't heard much from him, right?
Under an NDA, right? And he's a very, very private and serious individual. This is not someone who's prone to nonsense. We need someone that's able to tell the people that these understandable things in the sky that may have other folks driving them is also linked to these things that we've been calling paranormal for a very long time through a shared medium. And that medium, whether you want to call it another dimension, hyperspace, the Akash, the astral plane, all of these different things that people want to pull in. Granted, saying the Akash is more akin to saying collective consciousness. But this medium seems to be the thing that these things have in common. That there seems to be something about the translation of some of these craft, the ones that seem to stop being somewhere and then begin being somewhere in linear fashion later. Where were they in between? A lot of people are only making the leap to say, dang, these things are fast. I don't think we always have evidence that there was a thing in between point A and point B. So, and unfortunately, again, because of semantics and perception, all of us go, oh, bro, do you mean like hyperspace, like in Star Trek? Well, that's a great metaphor for discussing something that someone doesn't have any math behind, and I don't have math. But at the end of the day, not necessarily. But we're missing the plot if that's where we stick to immediately. The first thing we need to go is, wait, there's a somewhere else. And all of the physicists, I think both of us know, will immediately tell you, yes, well, of course it is, but we can't do it that way because it's probably only the size of Planck time or Planck space, and 0 point no, there's nothing to it.
Well, like all these so-called extra dimensions too, they're not spatial dimensions. Like when they do these mathematics for like string theory, like it's not necessarily, there's like a manifold, I think it's like Yau-Calabi manifold, where it breaks down time and space. So it's not necessarily like how we think of, 3D or whatever. It's different. So what's like that's where I start to think, well, is this where the mind comes into play? Is this where maybe that there's, consciousness is playing off of these other, I don't even know what you would call non-spatial dimensions.
I'm gonna err on the side of belief for a minute, and also I'm gonna throw in a little gatekeeping too, and say if you're a long time meditator and you haven't found the substrate yet, and don't believe that you're more than this physical body, keep going. Because I can't escape that idea. I can hide from it now if I want to. I can live wholly in a normal daily pay attention to your family and the regular entertainment around us. And I hate to say mundane, but mundane existence. And
day-to-day consciousness is mundane. It's okay. Go on.
Yeah. Gain a great deal of satisfaction out of chopping wood and cutting water.
There you go.
But there's a lot of folks out there that worry every day about chopping wood and carrying water. And there's some peace to be had in that. And I think that we get each other. You know what I mean? We could probably talk offline for 10 hours about some stuff.
We did last time. It was the first time I talked to you. I felt like I was talking to
should have kept the cameras rolling, baby.
We said some crazy shit, I'm not going to lie. But I feel like you're somebody I grew up with or something where we could just sit there and talk about and shoot the shit and we kind of get each other, you know?
Yeah.
But I guess, so the thing is with all of this stuff that we're talking about, and with the Skinwalker Ranch thing, the only thing that I'm like, is everything being tested? Like, meaning you're saying that there's maybe radiation, what, like, is, weren't they testing nuclear bombs in that area? Is there any sort of fallout of that with like the half-life of radiation still being around or anything, in that regards? I mean, those are the things I think about because, you know me, like I'm all about truth. I'm all, if it's crazy and there's a good explanation for it, I'm in. Let's figure some stuff out. But when it comes to like things like that, it's not like I'm looking to like debunk it or anything, but I want to make sure that when I believe something that I've exhausted all the other physical possible options. You know what I'm saying? Because like I said,
oh no, I do, absolutely. And that's why I think that people like Gary Nolan and the other I think Colm Kelleher is another really another scientist that has just a great deal of respect behind his work that was out there. And George Knapp's video that he did that Jeremy Corbell helped him produce utilized the majority of that footage. And we need that data. The rest of us who want that pragmatic understanding that you're looking for, we need to know what they found. And none of these guys are calling bullshit. All of them are willing to talk about it to a certain extent where it falls into the legality or where it behooves their career to an extent. But we don't, until you and I know all that data, I want to know, okay, number one, I don't think it's as simple anymore. And I think we've all learned this lesson finally, that none of these programs ended the way we said they did. None of them. Okay. Every one of them got rolled into a new one. And I'm using blanket statements, which isn't fair. So let's just say a lot of them. I think we can assume that in general, we never stopped studying UFOs. We couldn't be here today if we did. This isn't just a question of one neat video came across Lou's desk at a weird office at the Pentagon kind of thing. So I think one of the questions we need to ask ourselves is, if those are givens, if we're a country that's not going to give up intelligence that's useful, if we're a country that's not going to give up resources that are useful, and we never stopped studying this, why don't we need to study Skinwalker anymore? And why can a private entity like Brandon come in and buy it and have a TV show? You have to ask yourself, okay, is this part of a narrative to get in there?
Right.
Possibly. Good. That's just how education works. All these people who think that educating the public is a conspiracy are jackasses, as far as I'm concerned. Right. But the other portion of that you have to say is, wait a second, you don't get rid of something that's useful.
Right.
Why'd they get rid of it? Why don't they?
Well, you said share, but like, why would you share it with Russia or China at this point? I mean, didn't they just announce that they've weaponized space pretty much, you know? So like, if we do have that stuff.
Last year, Russia announced that they've taught all of their special warfare operators remote viewing.
Yeah, that was. Have you seen
Nice.
that documentary, Third Eye Spies?
Very much.
Russell
I've seen a
Targ
couple
and
times.
Hal Puthoff, and
Russ Targ.
Ingo Swann. I mean, Ingo Swann was probably the most prolific out of all of them.
Ingo's my hero. he is my hero in a lot of ways, because we would have none of this without him. And I used to kiss Lou's ass. If I'd had more than a couple of beers, I just want to thank him. You know, thank you, bro. You know,
Right.
Not for you, would be here, man. And he's the first one to go, shut up. And I don't like it, because I don't like the attention. But he goes, it's all you guys. And I'm able to still take myself out of the conversation now and go, no, it's the other guys, man. But
Right.
I get what he means, because there's so many. If not for Ingo, if not for people like Uri Geller, which I know people are wrapped around the axle, they're gonna poison part of my beliefs, because, you know, in their mind, because of those names that I just said. Those gentlemen were flamboyant. They were larger than life. They were artists. They were artists just like Tom DeLonge is. You know what I mean? These are guys that when they moved around, they commanded the space. And for a couple of them, for somebody like Uri Geller, sometimes he wanted to command a little bit more of the space than he should have, and his ego got in the way. And if you look back at folks like Ingo, he was a flamboyant dude. When I say flamboyant, I'm just talking about how he portrayed himself. You know, he was very much someone who put on a show. He had the trust and 18 hours a day attention of some of the smartest people you'll ever consider meeting in your life. And people that were willing to push boundaries around them that was costing them tenure, costing them money, costing them their livelihood and their viability within communities. And lucky for them, the government got interested, frankly, because the private sector would have shut this down in a heartbeat, and we wouldn't be where we are today. We wouldn't have a piece of this that said that consciousness may have a connection to this. And I'm only comfortable saying may right now, and I'm someone who's absolutely convinced consciousness is pivotal to this, this concept.
But you do have the people, for instance, like, mentalists can show how Uri was able to bend spoons without actual, telekinesis or whatever. And you have people that'll say, oh, we only did the remote viewing stuff because Russia was doing it. And if they're doing it, we got to, see if there's anything to it, kind of a thing. So I'm not saying I believe that. I'm just saying that's what the skeptics will say. Yeah.
Well, and I'm willing to say that given the right training, and actually not me, but given the right training, we can train people to remote view in a day. With first timer effect, I can get you to see a target for usually first time. It's pretty awesome. But with enough training, we could teach hundreds of thousands of people to remote view. And let's be frank, after that, it's game over. Because if other people realize that just with a little bit of attention, intention, and relaxation, they can verify anything in history as long as they're willing to trust at least one other person.
I'm gonna go out on a limb here, and I'm gonna back you up and say this: during deep meditation, two things, and everybody that watches this podcast and listens to it knows I'm not really full of shit. I don't say things that aren't true or haven't been experienced. Two things I've seen in deep meditation have come true in my actual life. One of them being a place that I moved, that I envisioned. That it's just very weird. Okay, I can't really explain it. I'm not going to go too much into detail. And then the other thing had to do with an experience, and I don't know how to explain those things because I do meditate and I have seen weird things. I've seen like typical gray aliens and UFO stuff in meditation, and not I was just watching a movie on aliens or anything like that. So these are weird things that I have experienced that I don't know why I'm seeing them. I didn't ask to see them. You try and blank your mind out or for me, I have a little bit of a different method. I'm not, one of these traditional sit cross-legged and beads and chanting mantras. I go into like a.
You making fun of me, man?
No. I'm not. I'm just saying I'm not traditional in that sense. I kind of.
Just messing with you.
No, I know. If you go watch, we did an episode on meditation, and I describe step by step my practice and how it's kind of a hybrid between my grandpa, who was a visionary inventor and very fascinated with ancient Egypt, his whole way he meditated, and then I kind of riffed on that a little bit with tweaking a couple things, maybe incorporating a little bit of cannabis oil. I don't know.
Watch out now.
But yeah, so I've seen things. So I'm definitely right there with you, and I believe 100% a lot of the stuff that you're saying. But I just want to make it clear that these are very weird and gray area topics that there is no way to really back this stuff up because it is anecdotal most of the time.
Let me put some money where my mouth is.
Ooh.
You've got this amazing app that you're looking to go live with sometime soon.
Yep. Indra's
What
Web.
What if I utilized the portion that we've talked about me using for a remote viewing group?
I love it. 100%. You're in.
You guys can be the ones that set up the targets.
Let's
you
do
guys
it.
You guys can manage the program. You guys give us let's talk off. Let's set up a simple protocol, and we can establish some trust with an audience. Let's start remote viewing a little bit via Indra's Web, and if we have success, we come back here and we talk about it. If
Absolutely.
we don't,
well, you heard it here first, folks. You heard it here first.
I mean, I've basically got the learner's permit manual for remote viewing, so I'm willing to drive this car off the road with whoever wants to go riding with me. Let's go.
I'll come with you.
I told you, I said, whoever's listening that's important and in the right places, just put us in a room with, our choice of psychedelics and let us get to work, Serious, I'm not joking.
Yeah.
You were mentioning writing things down earlier and stuff. I don't know if you do this, but lately, anytime I have a psychedelic experience, I have these like profound thoughts, and I would always forget them after you come down. Some of them hang with you, like more of the family and like love type things, but like some of these like great thoughts that you have or like you think are profound, some of them aren't. Some of them you come out of them, you go, I don't know where I was going with that. But some of them are like, wow, I would never have thought of that in the day-to-day consciousness, and that's actually something I can put in my pocket and or hang my hat on or whatever. Do you do that? And if so, have you found it fruitful in incorporating to your day-to-day life?
Yes, I have. Yeah, I have some things that I do. I spent about 6 hours on the phone today, with various folks, and when I'm able, it's COVID changed everything, right? Because of quarantine. So we're a house full of Zoomers constantly, and but I spent a lot of time on the telephone, and I pace back and forth in my house, but I
do
don't
that
pace.
too.
I'm doing a walking.
Yeah, same here.
I do a walking meditation, very mindfully heel to toe, very very deliberate and plodding. But at the center point where I'm walking, roughly at the center point in my kitchen, there's a full-size whiteboard on the wall. If the door to the garage is open, it's occluded, but when it's closed, it's there. And under normal circumstances, it's notes back and forth to the family, a little bit of calendar stuff. Maybe the kids drew something on there, just a whiteboard. But when I'm pacing, I'm stopping at it and I'm writing stuff down. And at the end, it's full, and I'm taking a picture and I'm wiping it, and I just keep pacing and keep walking and keep taking notes. And then later in the evening, I open them all up on my computer. I meditate, transcribe what I need to, and I write it with my hands. I find that to be, I try to find as many connections to my right brain as I can. I try to give my intuition the ability, and that's what I've grown to call it. I've grown to think of myself almost, because if we're going to be stuck constantly assailed by duality in this universe, well, I'm going to make it work for me. And I'm going to say that, okay, my intuition is my right brain, and my analytical side and the one that makes the most mistakes is my left brain. And if I can, I stopped tricking my right brain a long time ago. You know what I mean? Like a lot of us, like, and don't get me wrong, not knocking anything, but because I still utilize it sometimes too for a different effect. But cannabis is a way to get somewhere that our life maybe has a little bit too much static in it.
Mm-hmm.
And the amount of effort that it takes to lower that static just to get into a meditative state, I'm not knocking it, man. I don't knock it at all. I think it's important that we get to, to thine own self be true. You got to get to know yourself and find out where your interior and exterior boundaries lie. So, for me, that kind of thing, that intuitive, letting my intuition be the captain when it's safe, that as much as possible. And I have friends that remind me, dude, you have a pension, you're retired, you're able to talk easily, all of these things, they say that it's easy for me. And I say, I get it, but we all still got to learn this stuff.
Do you think writing it down I mean, because I'm a big firm believer in writing something kind of binds you to it. It almost is a form of magic. Because if nothing else, you're putting your intentions into it. So I will try and write things down. I should write things more than I have been lately. Now sometimes I switch to just typing in notes on my phone. But
also in tune with the cannabis, sometimes we forget a little bit. You know what I'm
saying? I love the idea that every word or everything you speak is a spell and everything you write is a sigil. You're just not aware of it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
When you write something, you created something. You altered the physical structure of the universe. Even if you just pushed graphite on old wood mulch, you made a lasting thing. You created something. Whether you like it or not, you rearranged atoms into something that didn't exist before. Well, when you say words, you move the universe in a way that it hasn't resonated before. So,
yeah, you even look at like ancient Egypt, like Thoth, the scribe god. I think the way I think about it is when you look at the invention of hieroglyphics and that whole thing, that's a technology in itself. So when you're
those are 4-dimensional messages, each of them. Yeah.
Right, and when you write you're writing the hieroglyphics or you're reading or whatever, as you mentioned, there's like some sort of thing happening there with your consciousness. And obviously I think language and writing has had probably more of an impact on consciousness than anything else since the invention of writing and that whole thing. So I think that there's a lot there. I really think that we're, as we're learning more and more and more, the weird thing is like, with science, like, we're talking about psychedelics, like they're finally catching up and understanding that there's stuff there. And now to get into the entities side of things, even the academics that are studying these psychedelics are acknowledging that in the DMT realm, there are these entities. In high dose psilocybin realms, there are entities. In LSD, there's these entities that people are encountering, and they've done papers now. There's been abstract studies done, and there's no real answer to what's happening there. I mean, there's speculation. Some people think you're communicating with your own subconscious. Some people think you're communicating with your gut bacteria and flora, in terms of, because all of our serotonin's in our guts, so, stuff like that.
Where in the world did we get the same cartoon characters as archetypes of our psyche?
Right.
Why do we report the same congruent anecdotal experience under certain substances? And while I'm willing to entertain skeptics who say that that this is local, that this is it's produced in a neural network within my
in
my head.
Yeah.
But that still brings up a lot of questions, because those are the people that, again, I got no problem with atheists or agnostics or anything else. I just want to know what this energy is and what these things are. I don't care what we call them. Not wrapped up in any of the semantics of it. But if we're gonna say that we're all right, but it's not real. Shush. Come on, we got to get past that. We've why the point that we're at where our academics will often say, oh well, just religion is just here lay out the same argument, and while I'm not a fan of religion, those things grew up and continued for a reason. It's I'm not the one that's here to say what those reasons are, but some of those religious systems lead you towards something larger, and some of them ask you to stay home and take other people's word for things. And it's up to us to decide out of the 2,600 that people are practicing on the earth today, which one of those I'm talking about. But it's pretty simple. And I have to ask myself, and the academics have to ask themselves again, with all of these mysteries floating around us that we're starting to acknowledge. Let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back before paradigm shifting new ideas changed the way we thought about everything. Let's go back to a time where people like Plato, some of the Egyptians, Solon, other philosophers, before philosophy broke away from science, when philosophers and scientists were in the same room having the same conversations together, these were the things that they were observing about the universe. These were the things that they were writing down. They were learning that our interior state is the origin of our exterior action, and that these things, if you follow these anecdotal things, we end up finding substrate and ground truth that doesn't require faith. It just requires action on the part of an individual. And then the group is there going, yeah, water's wet,
right,
the sun's bright. You don't have to take our word for it.
Yeah, I mean, after you have the Enlightenment period, and then from there you start to see a lot of material monists, and you mentioned the ancient Greeks, and yeah, all those people. We've done episodes on ancient Greece. You have the sophists, who Plato warned people about, who are people that are teaching you material facts and material sciences to win arguments and debates and influence and this and that. And he warned everybody. And for that matter, Socrates did too, by saying that it's dangerous to not believe in some higher thing, meaning that when we start to not believe in anything, everybody loses their way. Nobody has any sort of compass. And the people nowadays that what are they considered? The new atheists or whatever, when they claim that just being a human's enough, and is it? Because a lot of those people are turds, in my opinion, too, the way they look. Like I look at those people give these debates and lectures and stuff, and they sound so depressed and like self-loathing, and it's like, I don't see any virtue in that. And yes, virtue is knowledge and it can be taught, so.
When I removed the mystery from my life, the only things left were material. And when the only things that I had in my life were material, the only thing I really cared about was dopamine.
Yeah.
Interesting.
The only thing that has got me in my life to set the dopamine aside and serve others, for lack of triggering some folks, it's the only thing that's given me satisfaction is serving others. I don't gain satisfaction any longer from any hedonistic opportunity. Not to say that I don't partake in indulgence and things like that. Each time I do, I feel that the law of diminishing returns just keeps slapping the shit out of me. And so for me, it's all about service and spreading compassion and understanding now. That's how I get my dopamine fix.
Yeah, I mean, and what you're saying, I think, though, too, is like, let's say, 20 years ago or whatever, when you smoked out of this just to smoke or to get high, or kind of like what we're talking about now. And now you have a reverence for it. You understand. You are putting yourself in an altered state that allows you to be more aware, more perceptive, more in tune with things. And I think that goes true for like a lot of things. I think that once you become aware or awake or whatever you want to call it of these things, and whether it's a spiritual awakening or you had some weird experience or whatever the case may be, I think that you start to apply that to kind of everything, and you look at life kind of in a different way, and you have more, reverence and respect. And I love mainstream science stuff, but I love alternative things too, because I think that there's a lot of alternative, weird, fringe things that don't get enough play that have a lot of validity to them. And I think that, obviously, we were talking about this earlier, there's a lot of bunk things that take away from that too. So it's kind of this whole seesaw thing happening, and we're just trying to find the truth.
Well, I run a dangerous game over here on this side of the screen, because I deal in a world of pragmatic, science-based individuals, and I spend a great deal talking about anecdotal, self-referential, and theoretical things. And actually, I wouldn't even say theoretical. A lot of the things that I talk about are based solely in hypothesis and cool ideas folks have.
Right.
But I have contact with people who are able to do the math. So I'm like that dumb little brother who's like, yo, I invented a cell phone that drives your car. And I can't remember who I'm stealing the joke from, but and you're like, oh really? Right. You invented that? And he's like, how does it work? Yeah, well, you just get out your phone and it drives your car for you. I think it's Aziz Ansari, actually. So credit where it's due. But
you don't need to credit him. You can keep going. Now that's comedy.
Well, I think that credit where it's due. Yeah, none for him. I think that if when we find ourselves, I think we've all realized that sometimes the guy that's going to build the thing doesn't know what the thing looks like. He needs to be told. So I think it's a team effort, but I don't want to alienate anybody with this stuff, and it's why I love your audience. But man, we got a long way to go. Mm-hmm. We got a long way to go to get people to think for themselves without having to set another person on fire or demonize a whole school of thought, or totally end the argument for half the room. Because at this point, look, we know based on the numbers in this country, half the room disagrees, period. You might get into a niche area where the whole room agrees with each other, but you probably handpicked all the people that are in there. So let's all just step back for a minute, especially on these bigger subjects, and start looking for the common ground so we can get to them together. And I guess that's the thing that I'm just dying to get somebody like me across the table from somebody. I use him as a scapegoat, but somebody like Neil deGrasse Tyson, and start asking hard questions that I'm pretty sure that his background doesn't have the ability to give a real answer without, looking around for validation on isn't Cahill crazy? So I'm putting my foot in my mouth probably, because I don't know if I can keep up with these guys.
You'd be better off, I think, approaching Michio Kaku. I think he's kind of on board with this stuff.
I can say this. I can't tell you who is producing it, but a year and a half ago, I filmed a documentary that Michio is in, as well as a few other people. Really looking forward to see how it's edited and how it, because I know for a fact that the things that I had to say were very different than what Dr. Kaku and some of the other folks in there had to say. And I don't mean that I'm not looking to scrap with them. I'm really looking to see how this comes out, because I know that Dr. Kaku is of anyone I've seen, he's open-minded to go, these cats seem to have something here.
Yeah, I mean, he's got the hair for it, that's for sure. You mentioned that this is like a long road, and it's almost like the way I look at like enlightenment, if there is such a thing. And, you get fleeting moments if you're kind of on the path or whatever. But I look at it almost like Zeno's paradox, the one where you get, halfway and it keeps getting split and cut down. And eventually we know modern science, you're going to get there. But that's the kind of way, like the paradox aspect of it is the way I look at enlightenment. Well, you're never going to get there. You're always going to get like halfway. It's always going to get cut down shorter and shorter and shorter.
Yeah. I feel like every hurdle I jump over gets taller and farther apart.
Yeah. And when you
Um,
learn something new, it kind of either debunks other things you were thinking and opens new doors to other things. And this whole thing's just an evolving picture. That's the, if, I forget who I was messaging with, but I said, you can't stop doing research and you can't rely on, if you wrote a book 5 years ago, it's probably already outdated. You have to keep moving. And when your curiosity dies, so does knowledge. You have to just keep going. There is no end to this thing.
I think you're absolutely right. And that's, I mentioned I spent 6 hours on the phone today with a few people, and that's because I'm in dangerous territory right now. I mentioned on Twitter something that sparked a lot of people's interest, that I had closed my personal investigation. And I mean, as a 20-year cop, that's what's up. If I'm interested, I open up an investigation. Get out a yellow pad, get a blue folder, and pretend I'm the skipper and the chief. And I did that for a couple of years. And granted, I had someone to go back to and to bounce things off of, who had really good insight. And we're talking about Lou, and no, sometimes he does completely ignore a question or something like that, but it's never out of disrespect. Sometimes he ignores things that are, he knows I'm never going to poke him for things he's not allowed to tell me. But I am allowed to have conversations. I'm allowed to talk. I'm allowed to, and when I say allowed, these are my rules. Okay? Lou would tell me, ask me whatever the hell you want to, and I'll tell you.
So you don't have a neural net at this point.
Well, no, I wouldn't call it that. I mean, the whole PK thing.
Yeah.
We kind of would. No, man. And I'm as of right now, I'm a Luddite as far as any of these neural implants go. So I'll come out as a Luddite and a purveyor of psychedelics, but I'm not down with putting a chip in my brain yet. I need to see some other folks have a good time with that first.
Psychedelics is a technology in a sense, and actually, I told you I write stuff down. I'll just share. I'm not going to share too much, but I'll share.
Please.
One insight was from a recent psilocybin experience. Let me pull it up here. I said, okay, so nobody knows why mushrooms produce psilocybin. Like, there's no answer for that in science or academia or anything. I think there's speculation. But I had a thought that these things are technology, and some people speculate maybe they hitched a ride on a comet, panspermia, whatever. But if you look at like what they do to you and what they are, wouldn't it be weird if that's the technology? It's helping us transform ourselves to save the planet and, at very least, maybe protect them as a species, meaning that they're giving this thing off to make us nicer, better people so we won't destroy them. That was the thought I had. And I thought when I came out of it and I read that, I'm like, well, that actually makes sense in some regard. I'm sure there's people out there that have theories, materialist theories, but I felt like that was kind of a weird, cool thing.
I think that we're definitely, regardless of whether you're someone who's going to pick up Terrence McKenna's ideas that we were running around eating, cow patty mushrooms and blowing our minds out on the savannah, or maybe that was.
No, that's it. Food of the Gods, Terrence McKenna. Yeah. No, you're right.
Okay. Whether that's the metaphor you're going to use, and again, I think these are all metaphors. We went there. We're doing our best, but the connections are undeniable. I think you're absolutely right when you say technology. You're correct, 100%. I think that using pop culture, Star Trek Discovery is just ridiculously adventurous to include the spore drive. To have that guy named Stamets. I mean, man,
dude, Paul amazing. Stamets is awesome. Paul Stamets, if you don't know who that is, go check him out. The dude even wears a hat made out of a mushroom. He's got a mushroom fedora. Just go check him out.
That dude's gonna save the world. He's gonna save the bees, and you're probably never gonna learn his name. So yeah, go check him out. these things to me are an existing technology, and I want to bring in somebody who he's a polarizing voice, but he's brilliant. And I'm going to say right off the bat, because I'm going to have to, because he's seen some adversity. His name is Jason Reza Georgiani. He's I believe he's an American of Iranian or Persian descent, and I'm sorry if I'm offending anyone by putting those two words in the same sentence, because I'm not sure the distinction for Mr. Georgiani. Now I have to say, because of the talk that I'm going to mention, one of them with Jeffrey Mishlove and another whom I'm sorry that I don't remember the co-host with, but he gets into some of his politics about futurism that I find personally abhorrent, about what the ideas that he draws for a capitalist future, but they're in step with his personal politics, so I'll leave that aside. But let me say that leading up into that point where we diverge, he discussed something that I found to be absolutely stunning in its simplicity, and also its how complicated it really makes things. And he discusses two revolutions that were on that are dawned on us. One of them he calls the singularity, which most of us are familiar with, a technological singularity of some kind. But the second thing that he discusses, and he's the first time that I've heard a mainstream academic of his caliber, whether he's in the doghouse right now for his politics or not, mention something that he calls the spectral revolution. And what he is discussing there is the information coming out of the government and the private sector, expanding the spectrum and understanding what we call the paranormal, and expanding our minds to accept these programs like remote viewing, channeling, and other things. And that those two things, that technological singularity, which I can say is, say it's represented in the public by Elon Musk and SpaceX and his and then you've got, let's pick Sadhguru, okay, the Indian mystic and head of the Isha Foundation. Let's put him on the team that is the spectral revolution, that wants people to sit on their butt, look inward, and find their connection to all that way. Well, the technological singularity is looking to bring us connection to, by saying we are the only all. Let's connect to each other with utilizing a technological means. Well, you and I have got this other means of technology sitting in between the two of them. Sadhguru is not going to tell anybody to go do psilocybin. He's going to say, go meditate, go do yoga. Well, Elon, well, he'll pretend to inhale a joint. I don't know what his views are on psychedelics. And he wants me to put machinery in my brain. Well, I've eaten the mushrooms and I've meditated. So
something tells me he's probably done. So I bet you he's done. I bet you he's done LSD. If he's done anything, I think he's probably done LSD. All those tech guys are microdosing LSD and taking LSD. And there's you mentioned flow state, and we've had our buddy Adam Bramlage on. We're talking, microdosing and psilocybin and LSD. And yeah, it seems to be a way to get into the groove for sure. So I'm not saying for sure I think he's done it, but if I had to guess, I would say that
I throw 5 on it.
Yeah, exactly. Let's get a pool going. I mean, the whole technology thing, I think, is, to me, I don't know why we're so on this track. Like, it's almost like it's inevitable. It's like this, where it's going. And I don't like it. No, I'm joking. I don't. I'm indifferent.
You got me to agree.
But I'm indifferent. I don't not like it. But it's just like, we don't even know what's going on now without that. Maybe that'll help us figure things out more. I guess I'm open to that. But you do open the door. Look at what's going on with the internet. The internet's been pretty much weaponized, and you've got all sorts of heuristic rhetoric and people arguing without going after truth, and nobody gives a shit about truth. It's just who can win the argument or who's got the better post, or so like I'm not hopeful in that regards. I think we need to kind of take a step back and just kind of work with what we have now and kind of settle into that. And then I think you can go too fast. I think that we're at some weird point in humanity the last 200 years where it's exponentially technology is exponentially increased, and our understanding of things is exponentially increased. And I think that, you know, I don't know. I think we just need to take a couple steps back.
Yeah, I do. I never thought, if you told young Sean, who, you know, is watching Star Wars and Star Trek and all, and reading Larry Niven and Heinlein and all of these other things, if you had told him that when he was in his middle age, he would be considering telling people to throttle back on technology and to slow down a little bit, I wouldn't have believed you. But I want to know more about what us being on a neural network, mental internet together is going to be like before it's there. Am I going to be, if I turn it on, am I going to be plagued with 8 billion people's monkey mind? You know, 7.9 billion of those people that don't know what the concept of monkey mind is. And haven't, you know, because most folk, this isn't fair, because I don't know what anybody's interior mental state is like. But based on the conversations I've had, most people just got that running shit show going on, and they're just dealing with it. And I don't know what that's gonna do. I guess that's the thing, is that, does the guy with the mental shit show, what's it gonna do if we turn? I don't know, man. I guess there's so many I don't knows. And I was listening to Lex Friedman talk to someone about this technology.
I love Lex Friedman.
And I
think he's
like, man,
super good.
Oh, yeah.
He's a good interviewer. I like his questions. It's kind of you know, along the lines of stuff that I would ask, and he's not afraid to get out there a little bit too, and even asks some of these serious academics like crazy questions, and they're almost like thrown back at times and don't know what to say. And I like that. Keep them on their toes.
Yeah, he's no punk, man. I really like that dude. We've got so much ahead of us, and I think you can dig that this conversation starts and begins in the first 5 minutes with the word UFO.
Well, we haven't even mentioned UFO in probably
I was gonna say,
an hour now.
Bring it right back.
Well, yeah, because it ended a while.
But that's why I think that's why we communicate so well, because we don't look at UFOs as this one thing that you know, like when I look at UFOs, I think about big picture things, and like our podcast. The reason why we talk about the mind and all these different things, everything runs through our consciousness, right? So everything we talk about on the show is psychedelics, altered states, UFOs, psychology, you know, it all runs through our processing. And I think that when you look at the whole UFO thing, I think there's people that look at it for what, like you mentioned, like nuts and bolts, and this is what it is, and it's aliens from a different planet or this or that. And I don't look at it like that, because I think you're pigeonholing yourself immediately. You don't even know what it is. Nobody has clear, you know, evidence in terms of, yeah, we've got the FLIR radar videos. Yeah, we have, you know, your experiences and other people in the military's experiences. And we have lots of credible people over time, you know, a lot of people that come forward and whatever. But at the same time, you can't bring that to a science lab or bring that into a classroom and be like, here, this is what's going on, because it's so weird and we don't know what's going on. So I think that that's why we have these conversations, and we can talk and talk and talk forever, because I think we understand each other in the sense that there's so much more to this in like metaphysics and metaphysical realms. And, you know, this, you know, I think that all these things you mentioned, Jacques Vallée and like Passport to Magoni and like that kind of stuff, I think that all this stuff kind of ties back together. And I think that that's how you have to look at it, in my opinion. And I think that you're kind of on a similar path.
I think you and I say this to each other a lot, and sometimes Maurice says something too. But I'm busting your chops as usual. Sorry, my stupid little joke.
And welcome back to Mind Escape with Mike and Sean. Maurice is kicked out.
Happens, bro. You rip on me. You fail.
Man, I was in the shower and I was going to zing you as soon as we came out the bat. I was going to say, I need some more of enlightened Maurice, or else I'm going to start treating you like Jamie, and I want to see some of that beautiful bean footage when we're talking about.
Yeah, but my boy Maurice has really grown into his shoes lately.
I'm just sitting back and listening, man. I enjoy the lesson sometimes. You know what I'm saying?
I enjoy watching your road trips. when you get in your car and you go somewhere and you do something cool, I like watching
nice.
that.
All right.
Because that's how I've gotten to know you, man.
Mr. Vibrations, folks.
I appreciate you guys so much. That little bio line on Twitter, I think I leave mine erased most of the time because I personally like chastise myself when I go to write anything witty or something like that there.
Right.
But for a while there, I just had reality theorist. And I like that because I'm not a ufologist. I don't even think I'm an investigator anymore per se. I sit around trying to figure out what's real and what's not. And I go all over the map with it. I'm willing to consider things that most people aren't. I've considered some things that have in some ways taken me to the boundaries of sanity. But I think that the way that we're doing it is the way that we're going to have to get to the specialists are going to find the math, and compartmentalized or disparate units are going to find the macro ideas, but human minds have to cast the net that pulls it all in together and creates it into our reality. Physics is physics alone, and physics is nothing without math, and math is nothing without a need to share or divide. So all of these things, the entirety of our existence is fractal. Everything originates at a level beyond or extends beyond. Very few things are finite, and we have to be willing to cast a very wide net, as wide as Indra, I suppose. But we gotta get everything, man.
Love it.
We gotta be willing to.
Yeah, no, let's actually wrap it up there. Would you mind doing like another 10 or 15 minutes for our patrons on our Patreon? Awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you summed it up perfectly there. I think that when we look at this whole thing going forward, you know, I look to people like you and Luis Elizondo, and, you know, I like UFO Twitter, and I think people are really, really in tune with things on there. And, you know, some people are specialists in little aspects of it, and I like reading the feeds and looking at what people are doing. And, yeah, you get naysayers and nonsense, and you get, you know, people polluting the waters and stuff like that too. But, I mean, it is what it is. So,
and we should disagree. And we should challenge each other. And if somebody pops off and says something they shouldn't or hurt somebody's feelings, well, damn it, apologize, and then come back tomorrow.
Right. I do think it is one of the better communities, though, I've seen as far as people not necessarily attack. I mean, yeah, there's some of that, but it's very rare.
Sure.
And usually people make up, you know, and become cool with each other, you know, once again. So.
Yeah, I'm chastising a group of relatively well-behaved individuals. So
yeah, well, look, you gotta. I mean, if a topic like this that's sensitive and that's been poo-pooed and demonized for so long, I think that you kind of everybody has to kind of keep each other in check, right? You don't want to get too far out there and you know, get lost in space. So,
and it's muddy. You got your bots, yeah, but. Yeah.
Listen, man, I really appreciate it. As always, you're super thoughtful. I think you're really in tune with what's going on. I think that I like your point of view on these subjects more than most. And again, I think that everybody's just got to keep chipping away. And I'm excited to see what you get your hands into and this documentary that you said is coming out and all this other stuff. And I know that there's supposed to be some news coming out soon at some point, and I look forward to it all. And I love your posts too. So if you don't follow him on Twitter, go check him out at Minty Hyperspace. And you know, he's not one of these people that just posts to post. I think you have really well thought out posts, and I appreciate that. So
thank you. Your evidence that you're picking up the message I'm trying to lay down. I appreciate that. There's nothing more validating or heartwarming than knowing you're heard by another human being. And I feel like you guys hear me. I feel like we speak to each other and we listen to each other. We don't just wait for a chance to get our agenda out there.
Yeah,
I love you guys.
Got to get these rocks off, you know. Well, listen, man, let's do this Patreon. So if anybody's interested, I'll probably post it up there later tonight or first thing in the morning, but we're about to jump over to our Patreon. If you're interested, you can go to patreon.com/mindescapepodcast for just $2 a month. We have exclusive content and episodes on there. And yeah, I really appreciate it. Everybody go check out, like I said, his Twitter profile at Minty Hyperspace. He has a website as well. I have the link down below the video. Check us out at mindescapepodcast.com. We have all links on there. So if you like watching on YouTube, but you want to listen on one of the audio platforms, we're on all audio platforms as well. And that's it. We love everybody. And listen, man, we love you. Thank you again for coming on and sharing your time with us.
You too, guys.
And we'll catch everybody next time. Peace.
Thanks to your audience, too. Thanks, guys.